What's up, everybody? Welcome back inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for another practice report presented by Byers Auto, the fine folks at Byers Auto. There's fine folks beside me, the 40-year vet Tim May, Andy Backstrom. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Fellas, a lot to break down. Talked to cornerbacks, safeties, both their respective coaching staffs, I guess. Staffs? Tim Walton.
Both their respective coaches.
Coaches. Perry Eliano for the safeties, Tim Walton for the corners, and the safeties, I guess. He's now the defensive passing game coordinator. Take that however you may. They just say that it's still the same sort of situation in that passing
just
defensive
cover
room.
somebody.
Yeah.
Is their approach.
Yeah, just play defense. Tim, big takeaway as we heard from Coach Eliano, Coach Walton, and some of the players who were in those respective rooms.
Well, right off the bat, I'll just hit one, right? Because otherwise I'll hog the airwaves here, and I don't mean to do that.
It's true.
Davison, call him Dave. Just don't call him late to play. Davison Igbinosun. What a joy to talk to that young man. Number two, he feels a lot more at home. You get the idea. He feels a lot more at home here at Ohio State than he did in Oxford in Mississippi, although he committed to Mississippi, obviously. Ohio State really showed very little interest in him when he was coming out of high school out of New Jersey. But really what I'm getting to, he feels more at home here for a lot of reasons, one of which is he's from New Jersey. He likes the north. He likes the cold weather, et cetera. And I think he's made a big impact, especially the last several practices of spring. I think they think he's the real McCoy, and he thinks he's the real McCoy too. But what a cool young man to talk to. And the team that didn't want him to begin with, he never forgets getting that phone call from Ryan Day. It showed up as like a Boston area code, but that's because Ryan Day still has the same phone he had, like a lot of us do, when he was a long time ago, and he didn't know what to make of the call, and he finds out it's Ryan Day calling him. Ohio State's very interested in him from the transfer portal, and he really didn't hesitate, from that point on. It was he wanted to be a Buckeye 2 years ago. Now he is a Buckeye.
It seems like the real McCoy just means the real deal for us younger folks, Andy. What was your big takeaway today after hearing from those Buckeyes?
I think talking to Denzel Burke, he called it a personal year for this year. Really wanted to bounce back from last year. Both he and Jordan Hancock were kind of affected by injuries and weren't able to be at their best and had somewhat of a setback in 2022, and they really want to take the step forward in 2023 to show their full potential. He talked about how, the stat we've mentioned on here is that there were 0 interceptions by cornerbacks last year. Denzel Burke called that unacceptable. He said that that's really a reason why they made such an emphasis in getting their hands on balls during practice and challenging passes from these quarterbacks. And he said part of that is just being in the system for the second year. There's an increased speed, and everything and everybody in that back end is just playing at a faster pace.
Yeah, my big takeaway is of the safeties. I think there's 2 senior safeties that are making a huge imprint on this offseason so far, and that's Lathan Ransom and Cameron Martinez. Guys, Lathan Ransom looks huge. He played, I think, like 195, 190 last year. He's up to 206 to 210, depending on the day. You get a little water weight in there. You never really know what your actual weight is. But he's playing pretty big, and he looks a lot bigger right now. He looks like a safety at Ohio State. He doesn't look like a safety playing at Ohio State. He looks like an Ohio State safety, like what they should look like. Josh Proctor looks good too, but then Cameron Martinez looks a little bulkier, looks a little bigger, looks ready to play in that slot corner, nickel, whatever you want to call it. We make so much of these names, but really he's just the third corner on the field when he's out there, Cameron Martinez. And I've been impressed with him. Ohio State's been impressed with him from everything we've been hearing at lettermenrow.com. And then you go out there on Saturday at the scrimmage and you see who's running the third safety with the ones? Cameron Martinez. And so I think there's a lot of merit to that. He's making that push. He's making that jump. He's taking things personal. He really, after last season, the end of the year, he and Lathan Ransom used that as fuel, those mistakes as fuel to get better. And I think they have gotten better. And I'm really excited to see what Lathan and Cam do. And we're going to have more of that, like I said, at lettermenrow.com, because I want to write about both those guys. Tim?
In other words, you're saying he's the real deal?
The real McCoy.
Real McCoy is a very oft-used euphemism, but I'll leave it at that. What you just said summarizes, I think, this whole group. I mean, Jair Brown is up to, what did he say, 183, 185 pounds now due to the Mickey Marotti program. This group looks bigger, stronger, more confident, more competent than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
And then you throw in there Jihad Carter, the safety transfer from Syracuse, and Davison Igbinosun, who started 10 games for Ole Miss last year in the Southeastern Conference. And boy, just the experience those guys already bring to the room, but also just the way they mix into the room so easily is really cool. But we were just talking to Perry Eliano just a few minutes ago. There's something to be said for having everybody was sort of new to the 4-2-5 defense last year, including the coaches, except for Jim Knowles.
Yeah.
And it showed up at times. And just the fact that you now have a better feel for how these guys fit into certain positions, just like Jim Knowles told us a couple days ago, there is a chance that they'll be playing more of a cornerback in that slot corner, which makes sense, position, because just on the hoof, you think, well, a corner is probably a little bit better of a cover guy than a quasi-safety. But we'll see how it mixes. But they know their personnel a lot better now than they did this time a year ago, and we'll see if that pays off. Obviously, we're going to see some more scrimmaging as this goes on, including on Saturday, and then of course, the spring game. And but that's what stands out to me is just how much older, more mature the whole group is, including the coaches that are coaching them, in terms of dealing with it.
Yeah, you saw some of those growing pains when you had, Cameron Martinez in one-on-one situations last year against Michigan with no help deep, and you get beat because you put the offense found a way to put him in a bad spot. You see that against Georgia. Lathan Ransom falls down because he's in one-on-one coverage against one of the fastest receivers in the SEC, plays for Georgia, and you got a 76-yard touchdown pass. I think the knowing of personnel, and they didn't talk about this, but you can really start to piece apart this and say, like, okay, they know their personnel a lot better, and the goal of this spring is to make sure that they're not putting guys in that position again. And, like I said, they didn't really talk about that, but you can really take that from these conversations of, like, we know our personnel better. The players know the system better. We have to make sure that when they're all out there, they all know the position they need to be in, because offenses will try to do that more. That was a very indirect way of directly saying we have to be better in those situations because we have to have better personnel out there. I think the personnel they're throwing out there right now looks a lot better. We're going to find out a lot more on Saturday when we get to watch another full practice.
I got to say, Sonny Styles just amazes me because I swear he's grown an inch and a half since last fall. I mean,
yeah,
he is a big guy playing in the secondary. And, you heard me ask the coaches, I mean, this idea that, and even some of the players, I even asked Sonny, I mean, the buzz going around is that guy's got to get on the field somehow, some way. And he kind of smiled about it, but they've got the raw material here to be pretty good in that secondary. I don't know if you agree or not, Andy.
Yeah, I was actually just going to talk about Sonny as well. I mean, he mentioned that it's hard to remember that he was literally here in the summer as a 17-year-old. Now he's only 18 years old. He looks like he could be 22 or something.
Yeah.
And you look at the safety group, you got Josh Proctor, who just turned 24, and then you have Sonny Styles on the other end of the spectrum, just, he's 18. And these are two guys that could be big impact players for that safety group. And that just kind of speaks to what college football is right now. But it's also amazing to watch because they both possess pretty good maturity in talking to us and kind of displaying their goals. Sonny mentioned that, it was kind of surreal for him to get playing time as quickly as he did last season. Came in the summer and pretty much immediately was on the field in some capacity. And then, of course, he's playing more than 10 snaps in the college football playoff against Georgia. And one of the things he talked about is just, things just feel a little bit more slowed down. He feels like he's a little bit more just in place here, and it hasn't even been a full year, and that makes you think about what could he be, in a couple of years here. But that's something they haven't totally figured out yet. I mean, Jim Knowles said earlier this week, like, no, we probably won't even know by the end of spring where exactly we're going to use him. They could use him even at that nickel spot. They could use him obviously at the safety spot more as like the enforcer, but they haven't totally figured out where they're going to use him yet.
Yeah, he looks to me like that enforcer kind of guy, just physically. And then watching him run around, watching the scrimmage the other day, he gets places, man. And he seems to have an instinct for it. And like Perry Eliano said, the reluctance last year was that you were always wondering, did he know exactly where he was supposed to be all the time? I mean, that's what you run into with a young player and stuff. That's why there was reluctance to play him. It's funny, in that Georgia game, he played early, but then he sort of disappeared. I'm talking about from the lineup, and I'm just going, that's what I was harping on at the end of the year last year. It just seemed like there were some guys who maybe should have played more. This is from us, or from my vantage point looking at it, who didn't for whatever reason. But it always comes down to what we're getting to experience. This always comes down to, do they know their assignment? Can you trust them to be there? things like that. Like you said, Cam Martinez on that one play against, I think it was a Michigan game. Did he know he didn't have safety help over the backside? Is that why he let the guy run the post? You know what I mean? There are all these things that come into play when you're putting 5 new guys together that maybe they won't have those kind of like breakdowns this year.
Yeah, and I think that's why I'm giving a lot of credit to Ohio State this spring as a program for opening the doors a little more. We've gotten to watch a lot of practice so far this spring. We're going to get to watch a lot more. And I think that's big for us because now instead of maybe, in September, we say, hey, we saw Caden Curry in that 20 minutes that we watched at practice.
He was running those drills really nice.
Yeah, running individual drills against air really cool. Why isn't he out there in the
trash cans
in the second quarter against Arkansas State? Well, right now, we've watched an entire practice, but 2.5 hours. We've watched 40 minutes of practices here and there. Other times, we're getting to watch another practice Saturday. Then we get to watch the spring game with everybody else on Big Ten Network. I think here in a few weeks, like us being more well-informed about these kind of things helps you guys who are watching be more well-informed. I think that's paramount in this secondary, where there's 3 guys who we think could compete for a starting spot, and then Jair Brown's adding weight. Maybe there's 4. There's a bunch of guys in that safety room who it's a cluttered mess of a room as far as like top-end talent. Well, Perry Eliano's got his hands full. Well, we can at least get a little bit from that. Like we see Cameron Martinez working with the ones. We see Josh Proctor out there with the ones as a 6th-year guy. We see Lathan Ransom out there, but then we see other guys getting in the mix and being there with the ones. Okay, well, we can tell you guys what's going on there. And today was a lot of help, too, because you get a sense of where the confidence level is in this room. I think it's very high, and it's higher than I even thought it would be based on the way last year ended. They've completely put that behind them, and I think they're ready to move forward.
If you didn't learn from last year, whatever, I mean, I'm talking about the players, then wow, you really don't belong here. So they did pick up on stuff. But I'm just thinking Josh Proctor, just remember when he came in, I was touting his praises forever.
Like 3 or 4 years, Tim.
Yeah. He was going to be the breakout player, blah, 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 from Owasso, Oklahoma, right outside Tulsa. And he had to pay his dues, got banged up, blah, blah, blah. But like Perry Eliano said, don't be in a hurry. You know what I mean? I mean, that's one of the things. Don't be in a hurry to go from here to there, meaning from the college to the NFL, things like that. I mean, the patience brings along learning, brings along confidence in what you're doing. And the guy that you would have thought would have been first out the door of his recruiting class, what was that, 2018?
Yep.
He might have been one of them. Now he's going into his 6th year. You know what I mean? So you should both he and the program should earn dividends from what he's been through and stuff. And everything you hear is he's having a very good spring, which I think bodes well because he is an instinctive football player, and if he can couple that with making sure you're taking care of your responsibility from one play to the next, and a guy who's going to be 20 or just turned 24 or 23, whatever it is, last week, you got something going for you.
Andy, I don't think we should be talking about 24 as being old. I think I'm gonna die on that hill here. We don't need to talk about 24 being old, but Josh Proctor is the old head in that room. And like I said, he leads, in a way, a very confident room that you can tell they've kind of put everything in the rearview mirror. They're ready to move forward.
Yeah, well, Perry Eliano kind of reminded us all that these are just kids, even 24, 18. But, yeah, I mean, Josh spoke with a sense of purpose today. I felt like it seems like he's kind of relaxed. And, okay, I am older. I am still here in my 6th year. But I actually have a chance to be a leader and not just talk about it. Yeah. That was kind of his message today. It's this, he seems very just calm and kind of relaxed, stoic a little bit about knowing his role rather than trying to force it and get in his own way, as he said. The other guy I wanted to talk about, we haven't mentioned, is Jahad Carter. I feel like he's been a little bit forgotten about. He's still in the mix here at the nickel spot, but also at all 3 safety positions, and that's kind of been stressed that he's versatile enough to be at all 3 of these spots. I know you were over there talking to him. What do you see from him, Spencer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually learned a lot from what Perry said about him, which was, Perry Eliano was talking about how it's the 2nd year in the system for him too. He knows all the guys better. Well, then here you have this guy who started 3 years at Syracuse who they don't know as much about, but they know that he's talented. And they know that he can make plays. He's done it at a high level at an ACC school for 3 years. And so, he's a pretty confident guy. I think the competition is what drove him here. He could have went a lot of places and started. There were a lot of schools on his radar when he entered the transfer portal where he could have started, and they could be talking about him. Hey, is Jahad Carter an All-American? Is Jahad Carter going to be the leader of this unit? we're sitting here like, hey, is Jahad Carter going to be in the mix? And so that says a lot about his competitiveness, his drive, his level of willingness to get his hands dirty and actually try to compete for a starting job. And I think that's going to serve not only Jahad Carter well, but I think it's going to serve Ohio State well for having him in the room to push everyone else. Sure, Cameron Martinez, very talented. Lathan Ransom, Josh Proctor, Sonny Styles, as Tim likes to say, right on down the line. But
Clack.
Yeah, right on down the track. But Jahad Carter, he's a guy, like you said, he kind of gets forgotten about. He kind of, had a chance to remind everybody that he's going to be in that mix. He's going to push for a role here.
I don't think he's forgotten about. I mean, I'm not mincing words with you and stuff, but like you just said, as much as you like him bringing what he's bringing, like Tanner McAllister did this time a year ago, what he brought to that room was immediate leadership. I mean, and on top of that, a guy that everybody in that room knew that he knew what that defense was all about. You know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of a different dynamic with Jahad. Like you just said, this guy, you will watch a video of Jahad Carter from Syracuse. He's a really good football player.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, Tim, but in a way, I mean, Jahad kind of brings that experience too. This is a guy who, Andy, you covered the ACC.
But not in this deep.
What's that Syracuse defense? It's a 3-3-5. So he's used to having 5 defensive backs in the field. There is a level, I would say, and now that I think about it more, I probably should have asked him, of like familiarity with having 3 safeties on the field. Like you said, Tim.
But every five defensive back secondary and built the same way, like you're talking about. And that's, I mean, what I think is encouraging for Ohio State fans to hear coming out of this camp the last several weeks is that Jim Knowles is not dyed in the wool that a safety has to play that slot corner, has to be that nickel back.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's a nickel back. You can name it whatever you want to call it.
Nickel back?
Exactly. I don't think that CD's ever been out of its cover at our house. It's still sitting on the shelf. But the bottom line is Jair Brown working, for example, talking about being that third corner on the field and maybe being that slot corner guy, which is what the NFL does. You know what I mean? Jim Knowles, they're tinkering with his defense as we speak. Like he said, they're not even going to get into the jack position maybe until the fall, maybe when Mitchell Melton, for example, is available and stuff. So you're seeing a whole evolution here. You're not just seeing, plug and play players coming in. They're wondering who can help you and help you the best. And I think they're finding that out.
Yeah, it's been my biggest takeaway from talking to the defensive staff and the players this spring is this open-mindedness to kind of adjust, reflect, take the wide-angle view on last year. Not only say, okay, what went wrong and how can we fix it, but really be open to trying new things. Like what Tim just mentioned with the nickel spot, being more open to that being more of a corner than a safety, I guess in practice rather than name, but also with the jack spot saying, we're not going to really touch that until fall camp rolls around. We need to focus on the fundamentals. We need to get these guys better, whether it's putting Jack Sawyer with his hand in the dirt and get him back to where he needs to be a defensive end, or having a guy like CJ Hicks focus on being a linebacker before trying him out at the jack. And then even Jim Knowles talked about, like, he's not married to the idea of always recruiting at the jack. He wants to.
Right.
But he said nothing is non-negotiable at the Ohio State.
Yeah,
and that was kind of his message.
And he made his mark really with his 4-2-5 defense because it's something he developed at places where they had lesser talent. I mean, no offense, I'm talking about across the board.
None taken.
Lesser talent. You had to stir things up. But his mind, you can tell he's a defensive-minded guy, and he understands what he's got available to him. And that's what's going to be interesting next fall, or this coming fall, is to see just how much it changes as you watch it. But, without a doubt, they got schemed, man, a couple times by Georgia with the nickel safety guy having to cover the fastest guy on the field, or one of the faster guys on the field. You can't let that happen. I mean, you can't have the wrong guy in the right place at the wrong time. If that makes sense to you, it makes perfect sense to me. But I mean, they got schemed a couple times for some huge plays by Georgia, getting the matchup they wanted based on who was on the field, and then putting a guy in the slot instead of wide. You can't let that, you can't have that kind of mismatch going, and other people will have picked up on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's the Ohio State secondary. They're just trying to remind you, they're just trying to say, this is how you remind me of who I really am, Tim. They just want to be rock stars. It's all about the secondary. It's all about the nickelback. There we have it. I was told
that's what they called it in the old day, back in the real McCoy.
I was told to have more fun on this show by a random YouTube commenter.
Man, the nickelback is one. Bradley Roby has made a fortune being a nickelback, but not a nickelback, but being that slot corner guy in the National Football League. That is as specialty a position as any other position on defense. I mean, because you're covering guys, you're covering guys from inside to outside instead of the other way around. For a cornerback, it takes a lot of getting used to and stuff, and for safeties too, because you can. I don't know. We'll get into it.
The jokes go right over heads on this show, folks, and that's why that's why we have fun. I was told again by a YouTube commenter, whoever you are, to have more fun on this show. My Nickelback references say that I think we accomplished just that today during this show. So that's it. That's all. We're going to get out of here. We'll be back in this building on Saturday for full coverage of the Ohio State football team
at Lettermen. Talk about the dime.
At lettermenrow.com. Maybe we'll talk about the dime. I don't know. That's 10 cents. It's worth the dime, Tim. That's Tim A, the 40-year vet. That's Andy Backstrom. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back again on Saturday for another practice report presented by Byers Auto.